Welcome to my teaching learning session for psychology and BPC 132, social psychology, and my name is SONAL SINGH. We'll be continuing with the third unit today with social cognition, understanding social behavior. The last time we started with theories of attribution. So, to have a recap of what is attribution, let's start from where does the social cognition begins and what is social cognition. Social cognition is the thinking, reasoning, your problem solving, the process of knowing which is happening in a social condition, which any social event it could be a social interaction with people, an outing with your friends, anything which is associated to your interaction with people, around people is social cognition. So we do have something that takes care of these social cognition in a pattern of three levels. The first, as soon as we enter any environment, the first thing that we do is formation of ideas, which is the attitude formation. Once a formation and level of ideas that we form about people becomes impression formation. The impression is, do you take the person positive, do you take the event positive, do you take the event to be neutral? And once the event or a person or a situation is thought to be very positive, you want to know the causes behind it. The process of knowing the cause behind somebody's behavior, cause behind some events need is called as attribution. So we are studying the theories of attribution. The first that we begin with is Hyder-Naive theory. Hyder in 1958 believed that people, the first reason that he wanted to know the why and how people are attributing behavior is defining it in two simple ways. Until we do not have attribution, until we do not want to know the cause or about people's behavior, tell me, how do we find out, the need to know the a sense of social world, the need of knowing the environment around you. So that urge, that curiosity of knowing the world around you leads to attribution. It tells you to urge towards making a move towards finding out the cause behind people's behavior. So Heidenreich was one of the first psychologists who gave us a theory of Heidenreich psychology. He stated that there can be two kinds of attributions that can be made, primarily focusing on that generally when people are finding out causes behind people's behavior or finding out causes behind an event to being good, or an event of being a failure, an event of being neutral, they are two kinds. First is attributing a person's behavior to their internal state or their disposition, which is called dispositional attribution, which suggests that we label that a person's behavior is because of his or her personality type or his or her personality. So that is an internal part. We are attributing the cause to be a part of the person. So it's an internal attribution, and this is called as dispositional attribution. And if not internal, if we are not attributing causes of someone's behavior to personality or to the disposition, what do we do else? We attribute it to the situation or the environment. So this is called as situational attribution. So there are two kind of attribution that we have. One is dispositional, according to Heider, and the other is something which is the situational attribution. So casually, while we are making attribution, casually when we are judging people's behavior or judging the cause behind people's behavior, we end up doing this. I'll give you a simple example for this. Let's take an example. There's a lot of water on the floor, and a person walks through the place and falls down. So, just because of the water, maybe. So, people watching the individual might attribute it in two ways. First, if they know the person, they might say, oh, the person is always very careless, the person is very clumsy. So, how are we attributing it? We are attributing it dispositional wise, because we are attributing the falling down of that person, the cause for that, as their internal attribution, because their personality is something like that, that they end up falling because they're clumsy. Now, on the other hand, if you're just watching as a general spectator, don't know the person, we might say that there is water out there. The person is bound to fall down. No matter the attitude will not matter. The fact is that there is water spilled out. Anyone who walks out there might fall down. So that is called the situational attribution. We have attributed the person's behavior, the cause behind the person's behavior as situation based. We are completely putting it out on the situation. So these are the two kind of attributions that we have, which was introduced by Heider and Fritz Heider, and he stated that there can be two kind of attribution. One is the disposition, which is personality based. The other is situational, which could be environmental based. So This, when we talk about a situational attribution, remember we do overlook a person's personality. So when we say we do overlook a person's personality, that suggests we do not consider the person being clumsy. We are only considering the environment at the moment, the environment being leading to such a behavior. That's what Hyde has stated in the picture that I've given you. So this theory was 1958. After this came in a correspondent inference theory. This was a very extended theory. It was given by Jones and Davis, and this came out at around 1968, just like approximately 10 years later than the theory prior that we have studied. Jones and Davis stated that in order to make inferences about a person's behavior originating from a personality, we need to focus on their intentions. So, if you want to infer that a person's cause of their behavior is coming from their personality, what do you need to do? You need to focus on their intention. So you need to know that why are they doing such a thing. So if even if it's coming from their personality, you need to focus on their intention. So the major purpose of this theory was to try and explain why people make an internal or an external attribution. So now we are finding out the cause behind the attribution itself. So cause of people's behavior can be internal and external. Now why they are making an external attribution or why are they making an external or an internal attribution is something which the correspondent inference theory tells us, explains us with the help of focusing on the intention. So with the help of understanding that what is the intention behind a person's personality. So if a person is making a dispositional attribution, that is because of the personality and why they have an intention in their personality like that. In fact, situational or external causes of any action cannot be dealt here. So correspondent inference theory primarily takes care of dispositional attribution because we can find out the cause behind your personality, the intention behind your personality. We cannot find out the intention behind an external situation. So a situational attribution might not be dealt here. So now Jones and Davis believe that people paid attention to intentional rather than accidental behaviors of people. So behaviors that we are attempting, that we are doing intentionally, we were paid more attention to. However, in order to believe that any action was intentional, the perceiver must take in the three criteria. So, if you feel that a person is making their behavior intentional, you need to focus on these three things. First, the person who's performing it, so the actor who performs the action is fully aware of the consequences of the action. So the person knows that what is the consequences of the action that I'm doing. Right now, if I'm doing such and such activity, what is the consequence of it? The next is the fact that we know the consequences, he or she is able to perform that action successfully. Knowing that is the person, the actor is able to perform that task successfully. And the last is the actor is deliberately performing that action. So remember, if it's intentional, if you're making yourself do an activity purposely, three things need to be taken in control. First, you being the actor, you need to know the consequence. You need to perform that action successfully. And the last is that you need to be deliberately performing that action. You need to be sitting down, yes, I need to be doing this. This is what suggests us that your behavior is intentional. You're actually doing it with an intent. Now, correspondent inference theory also suggested us that when do we feel that a personality dispositional attribution can be best made? First point, what all it depends on. First is choice. Until your behavior is not a free choice of yours, remember a personality cannot be attributed as your personality can be not be the reason behind the dispositional attribution. I'll give you an example for this. When we tell children to be honest, purposely don't lie, you need to be honest. You be honest, tomorrow I'll give you a candy. So we tell them to be honest an entire day. And if they're honest that entire day, we give them a candy. Is it a free choice of the child? No. So remember, a dispositional attribution can be based on your personality when your personality is not being forced. Your personality is freely choosing an activity, freely choosing a behavior. That's what is called a dispositionally correct attributed behavior. The next is social desirability. Remember, behaviors which are low social desirability, less confirming, leads to more internal attribution. So if people are forcing you to do something because it's socially desirable, like I'll give you an example. Whenever we are doing a personality test, like graduating students for BAPC or BAG, you all will be doing personality test. While attempting those personality tests, if you need to like self check and tell yourself, no, the question asks that do I obey? If the personality test has a question that do you obey your parents all the time, and there's a yes and no, and you feel okay, this is socially correct, I should be obeying my parents all the time, so you do a yes. But that's not the condition. You are not doing that all the time. So you should have said all the time a no to it, but you say a yes. Why? You want to make your behavior socially desirable. So when you're purposely making your behavior socially desirable, it holds low dispositional attributing behavior. That means we cannot attribute it to your personality. Your personality is not something which is reflected in your dispositional attribution. So first, that your behavior needs to be freely chosen. You need to be forced by people. So once you're forced by people, remember, that behavior cannot be a reflection of your personality. The second that we talk about is social desirability. If you only do an activity or an event is only conducted for, getting a good name and fame, but the organization itself does not cater to the motto of it, but it's only doing it for the name and fame. Remember, it is only for social desirable, making themselves socially desirable. We cannot attribute that this is actually the intent of the organization. So when there are so many non-governmental organizations coming to you asking for money, funding you for something good, some of the organizations are genuine. They actually use those funds of yours to facilitate the rural sectors of our society which are lacking the facilities and the amenities. But if this entire thing is only the funds and the fundraising is only used, like 50% of use is the goodwill, for the goodwill of the organization, and the rest 50% is used probably for funding themselves, for funding their transport, funding their livability, then it's incorrect. Then it is socially desirable, and it is low consensus with something which is your dispositional attribution. So this is two, and let's move to more such things. The next two are, one is the non-common effect that we have, and the other is accidental and intentional, which was done in the beginning also, but we'll do it again. Let's start with that only. Behaviors that is intentional, likely to be attributed as personal personality, then something which is just done out of accident, which is very true. While sitting for a presentation, you did not know what the presentation was all about, and you just read the presentation out. During the MNC, or in the multinational companies, when you have a new thing to be introduced, and you do not know the product, and you just completely forgot it, and out of accidentally, when the product that came in front of you is something that you know about, and you were able to explain it. Did you have the intent to explain it? Did you have the knowledge to explain it? No, but it happened accidentally. So anything that happens accidentally is not attributed to personality. It could be attributed to situation, which is external cause. Luck. Luck is situational. It's not intentional. It is not an internal part of your personality. So that is, intentional behavior are more attributed to your personality, and less intentional accidental behaviors are attributed to your situations. Now let's move to the next, which is called the non-common effect that we have. Non-common effect suggests that if the other person's behavior has important consequences for ourselves. For example, if a person asks us out on a date, we assume that it's a fact because the person genuinely feel that I am an important person, rather than a feeling that I'm just available. So non-common effect is a person's behavior seeming to be important rather than just something which is a general thing which is seen by all. So picking up something which is not common is something which is having an intent behind it. So when people ask out for a date, knowing that you're an important and a genuine and probably a person that they cannot miss out on losing, that's which is the non-common effect, and which can be attributed to their personality. But when they ask out everybody, every new friend that they meet, they get infatuated to them. Every second person that they like, they fling up with them. So remember, that cannot be attributed to the personality, and it's simply because the thing is available to them. It's a matter of availability and forming an attitude towards it. So this was non-common effect and intentional versus something which was accidental. This finishes what can make us have a dispositional attribution, and there are causes for it, which was choice, low social desirability, intentional behavior, and non-common effect. Also, in the entire picture, you can see the correspondent theory suggests so beautifully that if your behaviors are freely chosen, not forced, they originate from your personality, the stable characteristics of you, and not from situational characteristic, becomes a factor for telling that your behavior is a part of your personality, not of your situation. So, personality actually holds a lot of strength when we are doing and talking about dispositional attributions. Let's move to the next that we have. The last theory of the attribution theory is Kelly's covariation theory. Kelly's covariation theory actually initially came with a lot of multiple observations. There were a lot of observations done on people's behavior to explain their behavior and also to tell that how people are dealing with something as social perception and social perception of the person, both your perception about you in a social environment and other person's social perception in their environment. So this was given by Harold Kelly. It was a very famous theory, and Harold Kelly stated that people make decisions or judgment about other people's behavior on the basis of the perception on the three different information that they get on. So let's come to the three different information that they come on, and how do we decide that a person's behavior is a result of what? Is it a situation or is it a disposition, which is personality? So three information that we observe is, first is consensus, then is distinctiveness, and then is consistency. So when we talk about consensus, consensus is defined as the extent to which other people behave in the same way in the similar situation. So when we're not talking about ourselves at the moment, we are talking about other people behaving in the similar way, like a same way in the similar situation. So let's take an example. Alison smokes cigarettes whenever she's out with, when she goes out with her friends for a meal. So if her friends also are smoking, when they are going out for a meal, that is high consensus. So this is for other people's behavior being same in similar situation. And if it's only Allison smoking and the friends are not smoking, it's low consensus. Low consensus for them, and high consensus it's for Allison. Now let's come to this last, the second point. Second point is distinctiveness. Distinctiveness is the extent to which the person behaves in the same way in similar situations. So we are not talking about the other person, but you're talking about yourself. The person behaving in the same way in similar situation. So if Alison only smokes when she's out with her friends in a meal, that's called high distinctiveness. But if she smokes like all the time, every time that she's going out, not in the same situation and similar way, then it would have been something which is, a low distinctiveness. But she's smoking only with her friend when she's going out for a meal and not randomly at every places and everywhere. That's called something which is high in distinctiveness. So this is for the person, not for people around. When it is happening for the people around, remember, it's going to be something which is going to be high consensus. Now let's come to something which is consistency. Consistency suggests if the extent to which a person's behave like this every time when the situation occurs. So every time if Alison is got out with friends and she smokes only when she's out with her friends, it's called high consistency. But if she smokes only on special occasions, like if there's a huge party in the environment, if there is a huge get together, then it's going to be a low consistency. So now consistency is same situation with the same people. So if it happens only with her friends, it's high consistency. So let's come to high consensus, low distinctiveness, and high consistency. So we can say that your behavior is dispositional when there is low distinctiveness. Why low distinctiveness? See, if you are going to have a high distinctiveness, like something which is, you end up smoking only with your friends and it's not a part of you. So smoking is only attributed to friends. It's not a part of your personality. It has to be lower because it has to happen all the time, and it has to be high consensus because it's for, you are behaving in a similar way in the similar situation with the people. And when we talk about consistency, it has to be high consistency because the extent to which the person behaves like this every time that the situation occurs. So whenever this situation will occur, you will have to do it. And the first is use behaving similarly in the similar situation. So it has to be high consistency, high consensus and low distinctiveness. Why distinctiveness? Because it's about other people, it's not about you. So this finishes with Kelly's covariation theory. I'll just give a quick recap, of covariation theory again. Kelly stated that we judge people's behavior on the basis of the kind of multiple information that we get from their behavior, and how they perceive their self in an environment, and how socially they're perceiving themselves and how they perceive themselves. So three things was consensus, consistency, and distinctiveness. Consensus is when you behave in a similar way with the same kind of situation. Distinctiveness is when other people are behaving in the similar way, in the same way, in the similar situation. Consistency is whenever this situation occurs, you behave in the same pattern. So it should be high consensus and high consistency and low distinctiveness, because distinctiveness is not about you, it's other people that you have. So this finishes with Kelly's covariation that suggests us that how do we, attribute people's behavior to be a part of their personality. This finishes with something which tells us of the factor of attributing behavior to your personality. Three theories that we did today was Fritz Heider's theory, we did Kelly's covariation theory, and we did correspondent inference theory by Jones and Davis in 1968. So was Kelly's theory in 1968 and further given. Now, let's move to a new concept of, are there any biases and errors while we are attributing people? So while we are attributing the cause behind people's behavior, are there tend to be some errors and biases that we did do because of our personal thoughts? Yes, there are. So let's start with the first one. The first that we talk about is the fundamental attribution error, which is also called as correspondent bias or over attribution effect. This is a tendency of people to overemphasize and attribute a person's behavior on the basis of their personality. So the first thing that we end up doing all the time is something which happens because of the attribution that we make on people's personality. So this suggests the over attribution, and the correspondent bias suggests that our first tendency to attribute people's behavior is on the basis of their personality. We do not give a check on the situation. We underemphasize the situation and we overemphasize the personality. So let's take an example. Someone not doing well in exams. Oh, she's always like that. Very careless. Someone not being honest in a relationship. That's the character of the person. So we are not seeing the situation here at the moment, not analyzing the situation. Someone being late all the time. Oh, this is the typical person like this, always very late, does not have anything to do, always not on time. So we suggest this to overemphasize and attribute to their personality. We do not give a check on the situation. Let's come to the second error of this. When we are doing attribution, there are errors like cognitive biases. Cognitive bias is it's a very systematic error that happens while we are processing and interpreting information about people. So this could be what kind of a person that you're attributing, you do some misinterpretation there. So there could be some misinterpretation while you're noting down the information about the person's attributes, stable attributes. So you might have misinterpreted or misanalyzed the person, which could lead to cognitive biases, rather than one that you're forcing, influence on the situation. So when there is a situation attribution, that's not a problem. But when it's a personality attribution and you're doing it because you've just had some errors, did not analyze the person's personality, there were some gaps, and you just filled in those gaps on your own imagination, on your own thinking, reasoning, rather than without facts, that could lead to something which is cognitive biases. Now let's move to another one, which is called the self-serving biases. So it's the bias which is serving you. This suggests that the chances are that you attribute your success to internal factors and your failures to external factors. So this is like a very beautiful thing you should see. Uh, you can take example of your own successes and I feel failures. Like whenever you're not doing well in examination, what do you end up saying? I did well. The question paper was really tough. The paper setup was really very tough. So what did you do? You attributed it to something which is the situation for your failures. Now let's talk about your success. Now you have such a paper again in the next week. You do really well. What do you say? I was very well prepared. I'm very hardworking when it comes to examination. You have attributed yourself to be smarter. yourself to be intelligent. So whenever it's about your successes, you attribute it to self, and whenever you are, probably attributing your failures, you attribute it to external factors. Like I'll give you an example for this. The same example that we started with. Imagine there is water on the floor and you fall down. What you would say? I'm clumsy? No. You'll say, the floor is wet. The floor was dirty. I was bound to fall down. Who will not? This is what happens when we come to a messy area. So, who are you blaming or probably attributing for your behavior at that point of time, your failures at that point of time, of not being able to walk properly on that floor? The external factors, the situation that you have. So this is a self-serving bias. When you're attributing your failures, you do it to the external factors. When you're attributing to your successes, you do to the internal factors. Now, let's come to the actors observers biases. This is best explained as a tendency to attribute people's behavior to internal causes while attributing your own actions as external causes. So this discusses that you're attributing whenever you're attributing for other people's behavior as well as your own behavior as an actor and an observer. So as an actor, when it also talks about the difference in the perspective when you become the actor and you become the observer. So it's a tendency that whenever you attribute people's behavior to internal causes and obviously your behavior to external causes. So as an actor and as an observer, it also differentiates between the two. These are some errors that you have. I have a beautiful picture that suggests, sorry, I'm late. There was traffic. You are flawed as a human. So this is what, for other people's failure, you're attributing it as there. So whenever it's failure for other people, it's their internal factors. And whenever it's your failures, it is external factors. So this is fundamental attribution errors that we spoke about. Let's start with now a new concept that we have, which is called the attitude and attitude change. We will today start with what is attitude. Let's understand what do we talk about having as an attitude? What is an attitude? Whenever we look at people, whenever we look at situations, we look at new event, look at a new place, what happens there? You start collecting a lot of ideas. There are a lot of belief systems that comes in, a lot of past experiences about it, set of emotion comes in, a lot of information about that object comes into you. So attitude is what? These are set of ideas and opinions. It can be both positive and negative. So attitude is like, it's like two sides of one coin. It could be positive, it could be negative also. Let's see the two definitions that we have. One is a general definition which suggests attribute is a set of emotions, beliefs, and behaviors towards a particular object, person, thing, or event. Why emotions? Because attitude comes when it's way too negative. At times, it comes with a lot of strong emotion. Belief system. Why beliefs? Because beliefs are coming from the understanding, the cognitive understanding of you, which is the thinking, reasoning that you have about that event, situation, and a person. So it's a very thoughtful thing. And obviously, the behaviors that you do on the basis of that attitude. So this is attitude. Also, Jordan Allport suggested a very elongated, a very explanatory definition for this, which is a mental and a neural state of readiness, organized through experience, exerting a directive and dynamic influence on a person's response to all objects, situation, or even events which it is related to. So it's a mental setup which could be neutral. Neutral readiness. Obviously it is neutral readiness because having an attitude gives you a sense of readiness to be prepared for something. Also, it is organized through experiences. Attitude do comes in. So a lot of stereotype that the attitude gets in are coming from your experiences, or also they're coming from other people's experiences which are given to you. Also exerting a direct and dynamic influence upon a person's behavior. So it's going to be either influencing you too directly, like parents end up influencing their children behavior very, very directive, very, very directly. So it's directive. Dynamic influence could be the influence can be a part and parcel of you being in that situation. So you hear it. If you really want to get influence, you will be. There could be possibilities that at some point of time you change your behavior, at some point of time you do not. So it's a mental neural state of readiness and an organized through experiences, exerting directive and dynamic influence on individuals' responses about object situation which they are related to. Now, Attitude do not come alone. So attitude also is a very, it's a very holistic concept. It makes you run through an entire situation, because you build in an attitude towards that situation, you judge that situation, you act accordingly as per your attitude which is being formed. So it does have components. So it's like the attitude itself has an ABC component to it. So it's not a hollow shell. It is filled with A, B, and C. So that means attitude has three components, which is affective, behavioral, and cognitive. So affective is what? How the object to the person, the situation that you're making an attitude about makes you feel. Then cognitive could be the thinking, reasoning, the thought and the belief system about that event. And the behavior is how that attitude is that it influences your behavior to do something and not to do something. Let's take an example for this. Let's take an example. Because of so much of climatic change, which has been the talk of the news most of the time, you end up being a part of, an organization or probably an agenda building group, which is about, laying out trees around the vicinity to increase the number of trees around the vicinity. So you feel, first of all, you feel very, very driven towards that cause, because you feel that it's for the right thought. Obviously, building trees will give more oxygen, better environment, and more the greens it is, the more the oxygen it's going to be. We'll have more water. We are securing our land for soil erosion and etc. And also for a lot of natural calamity. The fact that natural calamity has started hitting, cities and countries is more because of the development of the, the brick and mortar that is holding on the country. It's not the roots and the trees which are holding on, a road and environment that we have. So you feel cognitively very strongly binded to it, that it's correct, I want to do it, I have an understanding, it's for the right intent and the right motto. Now, thinking of that, you feel if it's the right thing to do, you pick up that, yes, I feel also, very, very emotionally attached to it. I feel that this makes me move all the time. The fact that I'm very attached to trees, I love colorful environment around me, and this colorful environment makes me feel really nice. So, what do? You also feel driven. You feel attached to that concept of planting trees. Now, because of that thought being strong and your emotion driving you, you end up being a part of that event, that organization, that group that is doing such a thing, that planting trees around the vicinity, and you end up being a part of it. So, what did your affective and your cognitive component do? It forced you, rather not forced you, it gave way for your behavioral component. So, did you realize your attitude will have all of this? So, I'll give you another example where all of these things are not in sync. Remember, it's always better when the A, B, and C, the affective, the behavioral, and the cognitive component of attitude should be in the similar direction. It makes most sense then. Okay. Then, moving to next that we talk about, I'll give you another example where they're not in sync. Let's take an example, when people know that cigarette smoking is injurious to health. So the cognition is, I know it's harmful for the health. I know it's not the correct thing to do. It's not the right thing that I should be doing. It's very harmful. It could lead to major problems, that smoking can lead to lung diseases. It could lead to multiple organ failure also at some point of time to people. You know the cognition, right? Now, affective, always feel driven. Whenever under stress, feels driven, can't leave it. Takes a smoke after being stressed, takes some smoke as soon as you get up in the morning. And you feel it's wrong, it's completely wrong. You feel, oh, my family has also been doing it, it's so not right. So your feeling towards it's incorrect, it is incorrect, it is not the right thing to do. But what's the behavior? You end up smoking all the time, as I said, the first thing in the morning, under stress. So, what is happening? The components are not flowing in the similar direction. That's why the behavior is not correct. The attitude that is being formed is self confused. So, that is what attitude formation, attitude as a component, when not lying in the same sync, could give you wrong behaviors. It cannot control your behavior. So, people who want to quit smoking should have the cognition also in the same way that I need to quit smoking. It's an injurious thing to do. It can lead to cancers. It could lead to breathing issues. It could lead to lungs, breathing problems and malfunctioning of the lungs. Also, feels driven. No, it's not the right thing. My family is suffering for so much. I don't want to be a part of it. I don't feel it's the correct thing to do. So you feel driven it's wrong, and your behavior, you end up quitting it. So that's how ABC function in the same direction as a component. So what was attitude? Components of attitude. Let's move to something which is that we talk about in the next page. Is why do we need it? Is there a need of formation of attitude? You really need to form attitude. Do they actually are a part of a bigger functionality of human life? Yes, it is. Without having formed an attitude, not having ideas about people, situation, and event will actually draw out a lot of things away from your life. The first is you not be able to express what you feel. Attitudes at times also gives you knowledge about things. Like before going to a situation, or let's going you going for a concert, and people have stated, "Oh, this concert last time happened in my city. It was a complete hit." Knowledge makes you self-prepared. Also, it protects you. Knowing an information prior through the probably through your experiences or through people's experiences, or probably it could be a stereotype. It protects your defenses. It protects your ego. We'll study about ego defense mechanism, both the concept of Freud, also a concept of your own ego. The other is utilitarian concept, which is in a way we want to benefit and maximize the rewards and minimize the punishment. So attitude tries to maximize your rewards from the situation event that you're being a part of and minimize the punishments in that situation. So let's start with the four major functions that we have of attitude, which is this. So first, let's start with adjustment function. Adjustment function directly states that people are moving towards pleasurable and rewarding object and away from the undesirable ones. So the fact of increasing the desirable activities and reducing something which is undesirable, which is adjustment. So attitudes actually make you well prepared to get adjusted in a society, makes you more utilitarian, which is, let's take an example. You're moving to a new country and having a friend over there who's telling you all the information about that country. It's like this, your lodging, your accommodation needs to be like this. Make sure you're closer to the university or you're closer to a place that you're learning and studying. So what is happening? It is preparing and giving you a base that you're more rewarded and less punished. Punishment would be suddenly, being in a new country, having no support and nowhere to go. You're not able to find the communication, you get late every day. There's a new bump every day to you. So it's like a punishment every day. So what will attitude, having an attitude give you about that place? It will help you in adjusting to that situation and benefit your time, benefit your workability. So what is it doing? It is making sure that it's rewarding you every day and minimizing your punishment of probably loss of time, loss of energy, loss of embarrassment of coming and going late all the time and not feeling efficient enough in front of people. So that's utilitarian concept. Now we come to ego defensive function, which suggests that attitudes are formed to protect at times your ego and your self-image. So at times attitudes are formed so that it protects you from the threats and fulfill your ego defenses. Mostly it is said that actually many outward expression of such attitudes reflect the opposite of what the person perceives. So it suggests that at times you are completely behaving in a very different way than what you're holding as an attitude. So mostly having an attitude is to protect yourself of feeling embarrassed or feeling unknown or feeling unaware. So it's protecting your self-image of not knowing anything. So that's ego defensive function. Then obviously value expression is one of the most, I feel, the important functions of personality. Sorry, important functions of attitude. Why? Not having an idea about a person, situation, or an event makes you very clueless about it. So it will, the more that you know about the person, the more that you know about the situation, the more you're going to enjoy it, the more that you're going to express, the more that you centrally hold up a lot of information about it and build in over it. Let's take an example. uh, when you talk about having friends and you've made so many friends in life, and you get to know who you are more comfortable with, people who are honest, people who are welcoming, people who are stable and do not change like the change of season. Once they act like this in front of you, then later like that. So it helps you hold a value, that my value is honesty, stability for friend making. So I always need to look forward to these kinds of values. It also helps you in a work organization. When you're working in an organization, you feel that collective work in helping in supporting other members of my work is something that I cherish, because once I help them, is equally that they are going to help me. So you're building a value system for yourself, for your work ethics, so probably your work ethics for it. So value expressive attitude enables you to express, enable the expression of a person's centrally held values. So it helps you focus, share, and openly, tell about your values that you hold, or probably make you function with those values. And imagine if you do not have that idea, you go into a place, have no values, nothing of your kind. Remember, you will be working like anything, like in terms of no ethics, nothing that you hold of your own. You end up working and doing a lot of tasks which are not under your paradigm, which are not under your expertise also. So this is what happens when you do not use attitudes as a value expression. Then we talk about knowledge. As I said, knowledge is one of the most important functions of something which is attitude. Why? See, forming an attitude helps you build up a lot of information about it. It could be a positive information about that person's situation or event, or a negative information. So let's take an example. You're going to a new class and people have stated that the new class is very welcoming, it's very positive. So what is, you get in a lot of information in hand about how they are going to talk with me, behave with me, and probably enact with me. It makes you well prepared. That knowledge makes you well prepared. So the first thing that we did, it gives you a neutral range of how do you need to be in front of people. So remember, all these functions helps us. The utilitarian concept, the knowledge base, the value expression, and the ego defensive forms you to function, forms you to hold that attitude both in a positive and negative direction, mold your behavior and put out your behavior constructively. And without having an attitude, remember, you're going to be freely floating all the time, changing from one place to the other. Do not hold a value, do not hold a solid construct about anybody or anything. So this finishes with functions. Let's move ahead with the next thing, which is attitude formation. Attitudes are actually formed. Remember, attitudes are acquired. They are a skill that can be learned. You're never born with it. Tell me a newborn baby who's 10 years old is found with an attitude, oh, I have a lovely attitude towards my mother. No, the child is like a blank slate. So we help them nourish, we help them build that love and affection. That's the reason when the child is born, they are always rested on the mother's chest for a longer duration, so that that warmth supports the child. That warmth helps the child to, probably get associated uh, to the mother, fall for that attachment to that mother, and forms that attachment bond. So that's again an acquired skill. Similarly, is attitude an acquired skill. It can be changed, it can be learnt and learnt also. So what helps you learn attitude? First of all, few things, as the picture also suggested, your direct experiences, past experiences, yes, sometimes prejudices, your teachers, parents, and peers, and media is a very solid, in today's time, very expansive medium, but that changes your attitude about people's situation and even bigger ideas about yourself. So as said, attitudes are acquired, but not it's also a source of acquiring attitudes. When we, sorry, the statement suggests here is not important sources of acquiring attitudes are, that suggests apart that when it is acquired, there are multiple sources that you acquire from. First is direct personal experiences. When we talk about direct personal experiences, remember, you being a part of an experience, you being a part and experiencing that attitude will actually help you acquire that attitude more strongly, and this attitude would be difficult to be changed now. Why? A personal experience is very strongly dealt with and a very strongly lived with. So you end up, not losing that, change. You never change that. Like, let's take an example. Whenever you had a fight with a person time and again, and the similar pattern all the time, and you get to know that this person is always going to be like this. So your friend is always going to be mean, always going to think about themselves, are always going to be an opportunistic in terms of the bond that you share. The direct experience will make sure that you never get back to the person. You should not get back to that person, because that's how it is difficult to change. You should not be. Similarly, let's go take an example of children. Children children usually enjoy fire a lot. They enjoy fire a lot. They enjoy, playing with it. Doesn't till the time it doesn't. Once that fire has hurted them, had a bruise in their hand because of that. What happens? the child learns not to touch the fire again. So because it's a direct experiences that they've had with fire. Then we have associationism. Association is a very beautiful example of forming attitude. At time we just associate two new attitudes together and form one on the basis of the older one. That sometimes an individual come across a new attitude and get associated with an older one and form the new one. So some people can like psychology because of their teachers, I feel. So they like the teacher, that's why they like the subject. And also at some point of time, they so like the subject that they end up liking the teacher also. So that's like associationism. There is a fondness of the subject, which is an older attitude, helped you form a newer attitude also positively like that. So that is association. Like when you're fond of a city or a country, you're very fond of that place, you found it very beautiful, and you've always been dreamt of being there. Now when you're going there, you feel like the people also there. You say, no, the lovely country, lovely city that I'm living in that country of, city of that country, and the people also are beautiful. Why? Because you really like the country, so you associate it, you like the people also. Then we have something family and peer group. One of our primary and secondary groups, the two are family is your primary group and peer groups is your secondary group. A group that you interact day in and day out. So obviously, modeling, observation, socialization is a process that your family gives you to learn an attitude from. So they make sure that you actually associate, relate to people while and also learning their attitude. So socialization is the process of mixing and relating with other people, and in that process, we make you role model. See the role modeling of other people, model other people, behave in a particular context, which shapes your attitude, tells you that you need to use this attitude at this particular context. Like children are told to greet elders. So the mothers end up greeting elders properly, and the child sees, okay, my mother is also doing so. I feel it's the right thing to do, and the child also does it. So this is socialization, and so is peers are very important. That's why whenever a child is not doing well, we have a peer associated teaching, which is the peer which is very influential, tends to an intelligent, influences the other, makes them change their way of scheduling, makes a schedule for the child who's not been doing well, make them to adhere to that, stick to that schedule and do it. So we change or probably make them learn a skill by associating them to peers. So peers and families are actually very influential in terms of attitude formation because they give us maximum role modeling and observation in the society. Also, there are more also, which is economic status and occupation. At times the economic strata that we're living in an occupational position of an individual also forms an attitude. People who are studying and teaching psychology, I've always found them. I'm always talking about the positive thing here. I've always found them to be more sacrificing, more adjusting to people's need, more forgiving, and knowing that okay, this is how things are, let it be. So it's an occupational thought. Also, people who are into estate marketing and probably cryptocurrency, they have a good knack of saving money, and they're very quick with making and displacing money from one place to the other. So that's because of an attitude which is formed because of the position in their occupational status or an occupation that they are in. Also, similarly, the socioeconomic background also influences us. Research has shown that unemployment disturbs the former, religious and economic values, which is very true. At times, the fact that low socioeconomic status does not lead to education. Education, obviously, because we do not have the money for the money of the education leads to more unemployment. So this is a kind of attitude that these people form also. Also, this is how economic status and occupation can also influence you forming an attitude somewhere. Now let's come to mass communication. As I said, that media is one of the most expansive mode and medium where it helps us form an attitude suddenly and even change our attitude. Imagine a commodity that you saw. Ask me about so many things just seeing their advertisement on the channel. So that's something which is happening because of the media, the vibrant advertisement that it comes in, it loses its functionality. Today, online shopping is on the basis of this. When you read about every particular technicalities of it, attitudes are generally less stable as compared to values. Advertising, for example, an attempt to alter your attitude of the people towards a certain product. But remember, these attitudes can be more easily changed in comparison to a direct experience. Why? When you use these commodity and product and it gives you a fault in it and it gives some disturbances in that commodity and product, remember that that is something that causes the problem, which is that changes your attitude now. So these are less stable attitudes. Mass communication media is less stable attitude until your personal experiences come to play. But it can suddenly change your attitude. It has the capacity to rapidly change an attitude because it brings in media, exposure, creative stuff, makes you more inquisitive, and makes you end up buying a commodity. Now comes Zazok in 1968 also proposed a very simple theory that mere exposure to things, events, and objects also creates a positive attitude towards it. So I should not be saying, but a lot of times, availability of a lot of riots happening in your environment makes you a part of those riots and makes you feel very positive about them. I don't know how many of you remember when there was a constitutional right which was for a particular community revoked from the constitution. There were riots in the country approximately 2 years back, in 2018. They were throwing a lot of stones and burning buses in the middle of the days. Remember, when we talk about this, a lot of people who are a part of RIDE do not know what's it all about. Only the availability of such events, availability of such activities around them, made them find it very positive and very adrenaline rushing and positive for their body, and dopamine, um, leading to that urge of dopamine that comes in, that happy hormone that stuck in your mind, and lead to that activity and attitude change. So mere exposure to any situation event, like for example, living in a country which has a very high value and a very high standard of living, will obviously change your attitude towards that country and about your livability also. So that's why people love staying outside India, because the livability is very high of those countries. They give you a better standard of living and makes change your entire attitude about your livability also. There are other ways also, which are technical ways that we talk about. One is social learning theory, which was given by Albert Bandura. Albert Bandura stated that attitudes acquired simply by socially observing them in a situation. So, in a social construct, observing people's behavior is social learning. That also leads to formation of an attitude. Then, which is also called observational learning. Observational learning can be happen with role models, can happen from media, can happen from peers, could happen from elders also, as per they are being shown. Now, there are two major theories which were done in learning, which is called the classical conditioning and instrumental conditioning. Classical conditioning is based on association, which is one stimulus leads to the coming of the other stimulus that elicits a response. So, we tend to train a child to be conditioned in, or an adult to be conditioned to learn something. So an attitude is formed for it. Let's take a example. The bell ringing that you have in schools, even in colleges. That bell ringing is a symbol for discipline. That one class is over and you move to the next class. So that is an association of SSR learning. The bell indicating a stimulus, it's freedom. You get up and move to the next. So your response is what? Your response is shifting from one to the other. You learn discipline from that. So that's also an acquired thing. Then we have something which is instrumental. Instrumental conditioning stated that it is instrumental in making you learn a learning, like making you learn an environment or situation based on its consequence. So it's stimulus, response, and consequence. Instrumental is, whereas your learning is based upon not on the stimuli giving the response, but something which is coming after the response. I'll give you an example. A child is told, I'll give you a candy after you do a maths paper 100 on 100. So if you get 100 on 100 or 50 on 50, I'll give you your favorite meal. So the child now is performing for the favorite meal and candy, not because it's a maths exam, but because they need a desired commodity that they like. So it's the consequential thing. So that those are operands which are instrumental in making you learn something. So this is also a way of learning and conditioning that can help you acquire an attitude. We can build in these attitudes into you and help you probably understand how attitudes are acquired. So we did attitude, we did components of attitude, we did what are the functions of attitude, that attitudes are important. Your life without attitude would probably will not have an anchor. You do not have, it's like a face without expression. You do not have values, you do not have knowledge, prior knowledge. It makes you more functional and more effective in the environment. And then how are attitude formed? So that means attitudes are acquired. Yes, they are acquired. They can be skilled and learnt. So through these processes that we have, which is 6. Multiple, there could be multiple other also which helps people form an attitude, because it's a thing, commodity thing that is required. So that finishes with formation of attitude. Let's now talk about a new concept, only a little brief, and I'll give you a little snapshot of this theory, because we might not have so much of time, which suggests attitude change. That means when an attitude is formed, when it has the caliber of being formed, obviously these attitude can be changed from one into the other. They can be similarly changed. How? Balance theory was given by Fritz Heider in 1946, way back. So Fritz Heider stated that the theory stated originally to explain the concept of pattern of interpersonal relationship in a triad. So they gave a triad relationship, stating that how interpersonal relationship can be seen in a triad, and how this triad should be always balanced. So these triads should always have a balanced among themselves. So let's go by the pointers which are given. Hyder explained that a balance exists between interpersonal relationship, or for something specific between two or more individual, or any psychologically dwelling environment which could be brought into harmony, or harmony can be achieved. So balance can be achieved, harmony can be achieved. So that's what they stated in a triad relationship. We'll also see why am I saying that triad again and again. Because in interpersonal, we are talking about two people and one object. Then, imbalanced structures are associated to uncomfortable feeling which says that something is incorrect, there is no harmony, there is a discomfort, and we need to be able to achieve balance. So, whenever there is a disharmony, whenever there is an imbalance, we need to convert it into balance. So, Fritz Heider stated that balance is a must. We need to achieve it. So, an imbalanced situation can also be achieving balance. Then, the reaction of each individual is framed in a triad which is called POX. Let me just explain it to you. What is the POX that we have? Speaking of POX, I hope it's available and my picture also over there. And I'll give you an object over there. The two girls over here can be made as the person. So let's take example. One person is the person that is to be analyzed as P. Then there is another person which is on comparison, which is the latter one on the straight line, which is the other person. The X is the object, event, or the thing that you want to make an attitude about. The event, anything that you want to make an attitude about. So that is the X that you have. So let's take an example for this. I'll give you an example. The person P wants to get their daughter married to the person O, son of O. So O has a positive attitude towards the X. X, let's take the black man is the dowry. The dowry. So when we are talking about imbalance, imbalances is just below that you can see. When does the imbalance happen? Imbalance is an odd situation when there are number of negative relationship which is having one negatives and two positives. So let's see how an imbalance here happen. So the X is the dowry. P is the person who's getting their daughter married to the son of O. So P has a positive attitude towards O. O has a positive attitude towards X, which is the dowry. But the P does not have a positive attitude towards O. So there are two negatives and one positives. So two negatives and one positives gives, one negatives and two positives. Two positives. Why P likes O likes X, which is the dowry, but the P does not like X. So which is two positive and non-negative, which could lead to an imbalance. Either how do we take care of the balance? Convert all into positives. Convert all of them into positives, or make it two negative and one positive. How do we make it two negative and one positive? You have to balance it. Either make it all positive. How do we make it all positive? We change the mind of P to like dowry. You also please like dowry and give something. So it's going to that P likes O likes X, which is the dowry, and even the P like X, which is now the P is ready to get their daughter married by giving dowry. O needed dowry and gets it. Or we can do it the other way around, two negatives and one positive, which is P like X, which is the person P who's giving their daughter away, really likes X, and X does not like O, and P also does not like. So they both do not like dowry. This is how we change the imbalance into balance. So whenever there is imbalance, a balance needs to occur. That is the change in the attitude. Because attitudes work only in consistency. The ABC also worked in consistency. Hope you all understood this. We will start with the same theory next time. I will explain this POX theory again and with more examples. And this is again Fritz Heider's theory that we have. And we did two major concepts starting with unit 3 and 4. Finished with attribution theory. We started with a new concept today, which was attitude formation, attitude change that we had. Hope the content was understood by all of you. We continue with POX theory again. Thank you.